A narrator says that the word SIsu cannot be translated. It is about grit and resolve. It is now 1946, and Finland has been forced to give Karelia to the Soviets. The story begins after the events of SIsu. Atami drives a huge truck across the new border into Soviet Karelia. His truck is old, but loaded with ropes, tools, and dynamite like a mobile workshop. He slows at a checkpoint and shows his passport to the Soviet soldiers calmly. After crossing, he discovers the abandoned homestead where he once lived with his wife and sons. The house has been untouched since soldiers raided it during the war, and he feels heavy memory alone. He walks through his ruined house in silence. Dust coats the furniture and bullet holes scar the walls. Toys lie where children last dropped them. He pauses by the doorframe to feel the marks of his children's heights. He finds a photograph of his family and takes it, along with the piece of wood that marked their growth. He gazes at a broken portrait and knows he is now alone. In each room, he can almost hear his boys laughing and smell dinner. In a Siberian prison, a KGB officer frees Igor Dragunov, a veteran who led Soviet troops in the Winter War and murdered Atami's family. The officer offers him freedom and money if he crosses back into Karelia to hunt down Atami, known as the Immortal. Dragunov accepts, eager to settle an old score. Igor imagines the wealth he will gain and grins at the thought of revenge. Atami dismantles the house with methodical care, taking each plank and stacking it neatly in his truck so he can rebuild somewhere safe. He labels the timbers, ties them down, and secures his rifle. His dog, Uko, watches patiently. When everything is loaded, he scratches Uko behind the ears and whispers that they are going home. He checks that no planks have been left behind. He drives away from the ashes. Elsewhere, Dragunov gathers his men and begins to move toward the border. On rutted roads, Atami drives south toward Finland, the overloaded truck straining and groaning. He hums quietly to keep himself calm and glances at his dog, unaware that men are watching him from a distance. The landscape is scarred by war. He passes charred trees, blasted tanks, and abandoned farms. He wonders if he will ever find peace. He swallows dryly. Dragunov has commandeered a truck filled with soldiers and a squad of motorcyclists to track him. They stay just out of sight, waiting for the right moment to attack while their engines idle. Realizing he is being chased, Atami slams the accelerator. Bullets crack the air. He grips the wheel and urges his truck faster, determined to survive as dust rises behind him. Dragunov's truck closes in, and he orders his men to flank the Finn. Atami slides a rifle from beneath the seat and fires at soldiers on the side of the road, knocking them back. He even aims at Dragunov through the cracked windshield, but does not shoot because his enemy has not attacked him directly. Instead, he uses the truck as a shield, weaving left and right to kick up gravel. One soldier lunges and is crushed under the wheels. Another attempts to climb onto the door, and Atami rams him against a tree. Dragunov's men shout commands. He notes every face and wonders why they want him dead. In the chaos, Dragunov calls off the pursuit and radios for reinforcements, choosing to corner the Immortal later when he can bring more force. Atami veers off the path, and the sudden move kills one of Dragunov's comrades. The man is thrown from the pursuing truck and does not get up. Dragunov swears softly as Atami's truck disappears into the trees, leaving him to nurse his anger and plan. To stop Atami, Dragunov sends a group of motorcyclists. The bikers roar through the forest, firing pistols. A bullet cracks his windshield and grazes his cheek, but he does not flinch. One rider jumps onto his cab. Atami brakes and the biker slides forward onto the hood. He grabs a winch cable, loops it around the man's neck, and pushes him off. The moving truck yanks the biker away. Another rider throws a grenade into the bed. Atami catches it and tosses it back before it detonates. He knocks another cyclist off by clipping a branch. Using timing and improvisation, he dispatches them one after another without wasting a shot. When the final motorcycle explodes, he pulls over briefly in battle. He climbs onto the fender, uses a knife to dig pellets from his cheek, and spits them onto the ground. He washes his face, breathes deeply, and prepares for whatever comes next. During the pause, he pours water into the truck's steaming radiator and gives a few sips to Uko, who licks his hand appreciatively. He checks the ropes holding the timber and tightens a loose knot. He digs out bullets lodged in the cab from the early fight and tosses them away. He feeds Uko a scrap of bread. Then he cleans the blood from his cheek and listens to birdsong as the brief rest ends when he hears the distant roar of engines growing closer again. He stretches briefly. After tightening everything, he hears a low drone. The sound belongs to Soviet planes ordered by Dragunov. Atami drives into an old barn and covers his timber with boards so stray bullets do not shred the wood. The planes make strafing runs, and bullets shred the walls, but he drives straight through them and into a forest. One pilot banks between the trees. At a narrow path, Atami brakes, and the plane clips a trunk and crashes in flames. He keeps going, relieved when the sky clears for a moment, though he knows it will not last. His heart pounds at the thunder of each shot cutting through the barn. He leaves the wreckage behind and keeps rolling toward Finland along a dirt road. His hands are steady, but his eyes flick to the sky. He thinks of his family and of the borders he must cross. He remembers happier times with his family. He tastes dust and prays silently for safe passage. The road winds through quiet fields and dark woods. Each mile brings him closer to safety and to the next danger that is surely coming. Another plane dives and unleashes machine gun fire. Atami cuts a strap securing his timber, and a stack of boards slides down like a ramp. The plane hits the ramp, flips, and explodes. A pilot ejects and floats down on a parachute. More planes drop bombs. One blast sends the truck tumbling off a cliff and into the ocean. He holds his breath as he falls down. The Soviet pilots turn back, assuming the explosion finished their target. Underwater, Atami unfastens Uko from the cab and cuts the ropes binding his timber. The logs rise, and he swims up to them. He salvages the precious photograph of his family and wraps it in cloth. Using the truck bed and floating planks, he assembles a makeshift raft. He ties the logs together with rope and paddles through currents. He whispers his family's names for strength. He and his dog cling to it and paddle through debris and cold waves. They shiver. Hours later, they reach a distant shore, exhausted but alive. The beach is a desolate battlefield littered with rusted weapons and abandoned gear. Among the wrecks, he spots a derelict tank. He hides his logs in a thicket and climbs inside the hulking machine with a plan forming. Inside, he tests the engine, packs dynamite into the turret, and secures the hatch. He studies the instrument panel and imagines the battle to come. Meanwhile, Dragunov refuses to believe the immortal is dead. At the border, he sets up barricades and mines, memorizes the terrain, and waits with binoculars. His soldiers smoke. Time drags on until he sees a tank crawling slowly toward them down the road. He laughs, thinking it is scrap rolling downhill. His laughter dies when the tank suddenly accelerates and smashes through obstacles. Atami has wired the turret with dynamite and wedged the throttle, using the tank as a giant projectile. At the last moment, he lights the fuse and bails out. The explosive charge launches the tank into the air. It arcs over Dragunov's head and crashes onto Soviet vehicles across the border. Amid smoke and screams, Atami emerges from the chaos, battered but unbroken. Shrapnel flies past his head as he scrambles through the smoke. Soviet soldiers raise their rifles to finish him, but black cars screech up. A convoy of KGB officers steps out and orders the soldiers to stand down. They are under orders to capture the immortal alive. He is bruised, seized, bound, stumbles as they drag him toward a waiting train. His legs shake with exhaustion. On the train, a sadistic guard cracks an electrified whip across Atami's back, sending jolts through him and burning his skin. He grits his teeth and refuses to cry out. Chains rattle as the guard lashes him again. His wrists strain against the cuffs. He counts each lash and vows not to scream. Uko whimpers from a cage nearby endlessly. Dragunov enters the carriage and reveals that he murdered Atami's wife and sons. He describes how the eldest boy tried to defend his mother and brother. He mocks the memory, saying he cut them down in front of each other. Atami is chained and bleeding, but his eyes burn with fury. His fists clench as he listens. In his mind, he sees his wife's smile and feels his boy's hand in his. He steadies his breathing and whispers their names, promising to avenge them quietly. Dragunov gloats over his pain, then leaves the carriage, believing the fight is won. As soon as he is alone, Atami spits out a piece of metal hidden under his tongue. He hooks it into the beam anchoring his chains and pulls hard. Each tug loosens the hook until, with a final jerk, it tears free and he crashes onto the floor. Outside, the guards hear a dull thump from his cell nearby. Two guards toss a coin to decide who will check the prisoner. The hook is still attached to his cuffs. Using its point, he slices open his thigh and retrieves a hidden knife. When the loser opens the door, he lunges from the shadows, slashes the man, and pulls him inside. The other guard peers in and sees only darkness. He moves with silent speed. He breathes slowly. The second guard chooses to jump from the moving train rather than face Atami. He hurls himself into the night and is swallowed by the darkness. His boots skid on metal and his scream is swallowed by wind forever. Elsewhere, Dragunov dines with KGB officers in a lavish car. They laugh, sip vodka, and assume the Finn is secured. Atami creeps forward through the sleeping soldier's carriage. Weapons hang above bunks and arms dangle lazily. He crawls on hands and knees to avoid waking anyone. A man stirs and leaves to relieve himself, oblivious to the danger. Another rolls over and knocks a glass bottle to the floor. It shatters loudly. Atami freezes and then tiptoes across broken glass. Under one bunk, he snaps a mousetrap on his fingers, but stifles a groan. As he moves, a soldier glimpses him. Atami throws an ice pick, pinning the man to the door. Red drops fall onto a sleeping soldier below, who stirs. Atami springs up. In a flurry of motion, he dispatches the remaining soldiers with his knife and captured rifle. Bodies slump silently as he advances toward the engine. He hears more snoring and steps over boots. The smell of sweat and smoke fills the air. He keeps his breathing steady, wipes his knife on a sleeve, and continues forward, counting the remaining carriages. Cold air whips through. He enters another carriage and pretends to collapse. When the soldiers rush over, he springs up and fires, shooting them before they can react. He plays dead again until the car is silent. He uses the same trick twice. Elsewhere, Dragunov hears gunfire echo through the train. He walks to the coupler and sees bullet holes riddling the car behind him. Fearful, he uncouples the cars to try to separate himself from the carnage, then returns to his seat and wipes sweat from his brow. Realizing that his KGB handlers plan to kill him too, Dragunov draws his pistol and shoots them. He grabs their briefcase of cash and heads to the locomotive to escape. Atami reaches a flat car carrying a huge missile on a launch frame. The gap to Dragunov's car widens with each moment. He lights a fuse and braces himself as the missile ignites, propelling the flat car like a rocket sled. Heat scorches his face and metal shrieks. Fire streams behind him. The flat car slams into the carriage ahead. Smoke fills the corridor. Atami leaps through the door. Dragunov turns in shock and they trade blows. Dragunov grabs a metal pipe and pummels him. Atami loses his knife but refuses to yield. He hears metal groan. He is forced against the missile as Dragunov taunts him. With a final effort, he spits out a bolt he had loosened earlier. The missile slides free, impales Dragunov and carries him down the aisle. It smashes through the end of the train and detonates outside, ending the threat. He watches the villain vanish in a ball of fire. The blast shakes the night and echoes through the valley. Atami detaches the locomotive, climbs onto a small handcar, collects his timber, and pumps toward Finland through the night. In Finland, two young soldiers guard the rail crossing. They spot a tiny handcar piled high with beams. Atami, filthy but resolute, pumps the handle. He stops and hands over his battered passport. The soldiers recognize the legendary immortal. They salute him and swing open the gate without a word. They exchange respectful glances. The final scene shows Atami rebuilding his home. He reassembles each timber on a new plot of land while Uko wanders happily. Villagers arrive with tools and offer their help. Surprised, he hands them beams. Together they raise walls and set rafters. In these moments, the warrior at last finds peace and a place to belong. The camera lingers on the finished cabin at sunset,